Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Cisco Optics podcast, where we talk about pluggable optics for networks. After you plug the optic into the switch, router, or server, you're not done. You still have to plug in a fiber optic cable. What does this fiber cable infrastructure look like? It's a lot more sophisticated than you might imagine. This is episode 9, and we start a new conversation with Brian Kelly of Panduit. I've worked with Brian for a number of years because Cisco and Panduit have basically the same customers, even though we don't make the same products. Cisco is a network gear provider, and Panduit is a fiber cable infrastructure provider. You need both the hardware and the fiber cable to complete your network. We begin our conversation with his background, and then we get into fiber cable infrastructure and connectivity. Brian Kelly joined Panduit in 2012. In 2014, he joined corporate R&D as a solution architect. Prior to joining Panduit, he worked for 14 years in the telecommunications and data center co-location industries. Currently, Brian manages Panduit's network architecture team, which develops reference architecture content for the data center and enterprise businesses. In addition, he manages the Panduit Labs network, which provides secure connectivity and resources to their labs in Tinley Park, Illinois. Brian has written well over 20 technical papers that have been published on the Panduit website as well as partner websites. Brian owns a bachelor's degree from Illinois State University and a master's degree in business administration from Keller Graduate School of Management. We've got lots to talk about. If you haven't already, please subscribe to this podcast. It may show up as the Cisco Podcast Network, which has other great podcast series as well. Check out our blog at blogs.cisco.com and search on hashtag Cisco Optics blog. All one word, no hyphen, and no spaces. You'll find podcast notes and links there too. For our YouTube playlist, go to youtube.com and search on Cisco Optics. And for product information, go to cisco.com/go/optics. And now, join me as I talk with Brian Kelly. Brian, how are you doing?
Good. How you doing, Pat?
Good to talk to you again.
Yeah, for sure. It's been a while in person. We talked a lot on the phone, but
yeah, definitely.
Yeah, that's such a 2019 thing.
Yeah, that's so 2019. and then we're gonna go retro, hopefully.
Yeah,
pretty soon.
Hopefully we go back to 2019. Yeah, seriously. Yeah. It's kind of crazy.
So, for our listeners, can you just give a brief introduction of who you are, what you've been doing in your career, and sure. If you don't mind starting with that.
Yeah, for sure. Brian Kelly. I've been in the industry for I hate to date myself, but 22 years now. So started in '99. Wow. I'm the manager of network architecture research for our corporate R&D at Panduit Corporation. And, like I said, I've been in the industry for a long time. I've worked a lot of different jobs in the industry. I started in telecom back in the early days and worked in web hosting for a long time and co-location and moved into the infrastructure side about 10 years ago now. I've been with Panduit for roughly 10 years now. So
Panduit was your entry into the infrastructure side?
Yeah, sort of. I actually worked with a lot of Panduit equipment and infrastructure in my previous job, but into this industry, yes, that would be my first.
Okay, and so that was, you said 10 years ago, did you say?
Yeah, about 10 years ago, yep.
Okay. And have you always had the same type of role or the same department?
At Panduit, I actually have had a very similar role. I started out in our working for our business unit, and about 7 years ago, I moved into our R&D department. My role was basically the same, but the department that I was working for just kind of changed.
Okay. And how would you characterize that role?
So basically, what I do is, I'm a manager of several engineers for R&D, and we create a lot of content for Panduit for our marketing side and more of our technical marketing. So, thought leadership pieces and ordering guides, the more complex, ordering information. but we also innovate as well. So later, I'll talk about one of the innovations that my team has come up with that's going to be coming out soon with Panduit. So it's pretty cool.
Very cool. So we'll get like a first look, right?
Yeah, actually,
Or first, I guess a first
pre-launch.
listen.
Yeah,
More like a
first
listen since there's no video.
Yeah, there won't be no video.
So you mentioned Panduit is in infrastructure. Can you describe more what that means?
Sure. Yeah. So Cisco, provides the switches and the routers and the transceivers and the firewalls and everything. And all those devices have to be connected somehow. And what Panduit provides is all that connectivity that connects, transceiver to transceiver, but also the cabinets, the pathways, the power infrastructure, the PDUs, everything that you need to operate a data center outside of the switches and then transceivers and active equipment.
So basically, if I understand maybe some of our mutual customers' perspective, basically, if they go to a company like Cisco and a company like Panduit, then those two vendors complement each other's products so that they can build out an entire data center, for instance.
Yeah, absolutely. When I was early on when I worked with Cisco, one of the engineers told me, he said, we sell the switches and the transceivers, and you make the magic happen in between, which I thought was kind of funny. But
Yeah.
that magic is pretty complex sometimes, and like you said, Panduit and Cisco working together really complement each other because we don't compete on anything. Like we're the magic in between the transceivers, and of course you guys sell the transceivers and the active gear.
Yeah, and I think I've heard. I don't know if it was in our conversations, but maybe in other conversations that within our customers, it's not always the same buying center that's looking at the infrastructure and the network gear from like Cisco. Is that your understanding as well?
Yeah, it's absolutely. I've heard that quite a bit. That a lot of times the network team or IT is specifying the equipment from Cisco that they're purchasing, and then a lot of times it's like a global real estate or more of a operations that's purchasing the infrastructure for the data centers. Yeah, and it varies. Sometimes it's the same parties, but a lot of times it's like that where it's the network. The network folks are specifying the active equipment, and then somebody else is doing the infrastructure in between, which can really cause issues. I mean that it's complex enough as it is.
And I think I've heard some complaints that the infrastructure is laid out, like physically laid out, installed first, and then the networking people get started, and then they find that with the new generation of optics, the choices in the infrastructure may not be applicable.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. It's a lot of times, you may be, it may even be like brownfield with the infrastructure and greenfield with the networking equipment. And they just think, well, no, it worked before, right? It'll work now. Well, that doesn't always play out very well. So, there's definitely a lot of variation in the way that the customers operate. But at the end of the day, like your infrastructure is a very important piece because you can have the best equipment in the world, and if you can't connect it, it doesn't work. Which
exactly.
at the end of the day is costing you money. So.
Yep. All right. So just so people understand how why we're talking today, let's just go through what work we've done in the past. I was trying to remember, when did we start? I think it must have been something with the 40 gig BiDi or something, because that's
I think so. I think it was
so much activity going on.
I know, it's like so many things. I was like trying to think. Yeah, I think it was with probably with the 40 gig BiDi, and that was prior to the 4100 BiDi, right?
Yes, definitely.
Yeah, so this was just the
And
40 only BiDi, and I think originally we were working on the extended reach with signature core
oh
to 100,
yeah, okay,
150
that
meters.
must have been it.
I think that was the first thing, and I know we
And
did
I
some
want to,
content around that.
yeah, and I want to say that's maybe 6 years ago. Does that sound right?
Probably, I was gonna say yeah, around 2015, because I think what BiDi came out in 2014, maybe. Yeah, that's probably about right. 2015,
2014
2014. Yeah,
might have been. I don't remember. It's a bit of a
yeah, that's
blur,
crazy.
to be
That's a
honest.
long time.
Yeah.
Yeah,
All
no,
right.
definitely, and yeah, we've done a lot of stuff since. With 4100 BiDi, we just did a whole set of ordering guides for 40 gig, for 100
Mhm.
gig, for 400 gig, for 40, 100, 400 breakout with
Yeah, and
different
that's
options.
that's up on both Cisco.com and Panduit.com, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, there's actually a specific page that we have at panduit.com/panduit Cisco fiber is the all one word is the specific alliance page that we have for all the fiber content that we've created.
So I was thinking, because a lot of our listeners, I believe, I don't have 100% confirmation, but I think a lot of our listeners are more, because it's a Cisco podcast, they're more on the networking side and they may not be as familiar with the infrastructure terminology and even some of the basics. So
Yeah,
I wanted to ask, what are some of the very common questions that you might get from, maybe not from people who know your stuff really well, but
yeah,
I don't know, if you ever rub shoulders with people on the networking side, people who work with the transceivers more, or maybe even not even the transceivers, just with like Nexus switches, for
just
instance.
yeah, hardware and stuff.
What
I
kind of
think
questions?
very common questions. Just like in connectivity, what is connectivity? like,
Okay,
well,
good place to
it
start.
so basically, it's kind of the magic that happens in between, like the guy was saying that I was telling you about earlier. But
Mm-hmm.
basically, what it's going to be is the connections that are made from the transceiver through patch panels, through structured cabling to another patch panel to another patch cord to the other transceiver. So like basically the fiber, the channel of fiber that goes all the way through that provides the avenue for the light to travel along between transceivers. So what are some common questions? Like I've heard of like what is an LC versus an MPO connector? And basically, what it is an LC connector it's the lucent connector it's called, um, is a duplex. So it means it has two fibers, and those two fibers connect into the transceiver on each side. Uh, the MPO connector, which stands for multi-fiber push-on connector, and it's also known as an MTP, which is a mechanical transfer push pull. It's just a trade name that US Connect uses. But those connections come in 12, 16, 24, 48, and 72 fibers. So when you
72,
hear a term
really?
like MPO 12, that's an MPO connector that has 12 fibers. If you hear MPO 16, that's an MPO connector that has 16 fibers. And it's slightly larger than an LC connector. So an LC connector only has two fibers, but the head of that connection is fairly good size. I mean, it fits into an SFP form factor, which um, that's probably another question that comes up quite a bit. What's the difference between SFP and QSFP? SFP is a little bit smaller form factor that goes into a switch that transceivers go into. And then QSFP is a little larger, and that's generally where you're going to see the MPO because it's just a little bit wider, and it needs a little bit more space to
And
connect.
these
So.
two connectors, LC and MPO, they look totally different, right? There's no way
Oh
you can
yeah,
mistake
they're
one for the other.
yeah. You wouldn't mistake one for the other. One's like more of a kind of like a square, I should say a rectangle, and one has kind of like two prongs coming out of it that go into the transceiver.
And you mentioned the MPO goes up to 72 fibers.
Yeah.
Like who uses that and for what?
Mostly in structured cabling. So like you could break out 72 fibers to multiple 12s or 24s. Most of the connectors that are used for patching would be like 12, 16, or 24 going into a transceiver. But
and when you say structured cabling, what do you mean by structured?
Yeah, sorry. Structured cabling is basically the cabling that goes between patch panels. So that'll be your long run, and what we call those is trunks. So an MPO trunk is basically like a fiber that you're going to run multiple fibers over from one patch panel to another patch panel. So that's kind of like they call it structured cabling because it's going to stay there for a long time. Patch panels, provide the connectivity from the structured cable, but patch cords go into the patch panel and then to the equipment.
So the patch panels are meant to be more flexible and changeable if needed?
Yeah, the patch panels themselves can be changed out, and the modules within those patch panels can be. But usually you're going to keep those pretty stable. The patch cords can be changed out though, very easily, because a patch cord is fairly affordable, inexpensive, and if it stops working, you can just replace it. If you have to replace a structured cable, it's a big deal because they're very expensive. They might run for 100 meters, or sometimes even longer than that, and you have to basically rerun a whole 100-meter cable that might be thousands of dollars, not only for the cable but for the labor to run that too. So,
and where would these run? Would they be in cable trays hanging from the ceilings, or would they be underneath the floor?
Yeah, I mean, you can do it a multitude of different ways. A lot of people use a product that we have, a fiber tray product called Fiber Runner, and basically it's it's a plastic tray that protects your fiber from the elements and from back, I don't want to say backhoes, but just anything that could run into it and potentially damage the fiber, because the fiber is somewhat, destructible. It's somewhat brittle. So you want to make sure that you protect it as much as possible.
Oh, I was thinking inside a data center, but you're also talking about fiber that goes under the ground.
Yeah, I mean, even in the data center, like if you had it like in a basket or something, there's potential that something could fall, or just random acts could happen and damage your fiber. So like you try to protect the fiber as much as possible. Copper within the data center is far more it's far more durable, but it doesn't go as far. So, that's why you don't really see too much copper anymore in structured cabling.
Because the data rate keeps increasing. And
yeah, the data rate is getting so high now that copper just, like for instance, with, 400 gig, we have a product called a direct attached copper cable. It can only go 2 meters. So you're talking about very, very short connections. So it's, it really changes the game.
Yeah, basically a servers from top of rack switch or something.
Yeah, basically it's a product that you're going to use from server to switch.
Hey, speaking of copper, that was the first part of my conversation with Brian Kelly. Next time we'll get into different types of cables. Subscribe to this podcast, and we'd really appreciate you helping to get the word out. Share this with friends and colleagues that come to mind when you think of network technology and optics, and leave a review on Apple Podcast, formerly known as iTunes. We're also on all the other major podcast platforms. You may see the Cisco Podcast Network come up when you search for Cisco Optics Podcast. That's where we live, and you can find other great podcasts there too. Also, check out the Cisco Optics blogs at blogs.cisco.com and search on #Cisco Optics blog. no spaces and no hyphens. We also have educational videos on YouTube. Just go to youtube.com and search on Cisco Optics. Thank you for listening. This is Pat Chow, Product Manager at Cisco Optics. The next episode is part 2 of my conversation with Brian Kelly. Until next time.